before doing that, just a reminder. Okay, we need to cover today, besides Isuru's speech, we need to cover today a bit of Innova Flanders updates from Dawn. So let's basically make sure to have it. Yeah.
Very good. So, first of all, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our GIMI Think Tank meeting. The GIMI Think Tank meeting meets every week, and we cover one of three topics every single week. On one side, we talk about what are the biggest and most important trends that are going to change the planet and affect every one of us in some form or other. So what are the mega trends that are impacting us? Because those mega trends input into what we can do in terms of innovation to be prepared for that changing world. So that's one segment of presentation that comes, which are broadcasted through the GIMI Think Tank webinar. The second one that we have is talking about innovation management. What are the future trends that we have in innovation management? What's the new ways people are looking at trying to develop innovation strategies, new ways to get innovation capacity, new ways to get innovation discipline, to be able to manage innovation so that they can go drive more ideas with smaller teams, with more resources from around the world to be able to accelerate it through the pipeline. So what are the latest techniques that allow us to go faster, to be able to do bigger, bolder things, faster and cheaper, of course. That's the second type of features that come through the thing. And the third one are the ones where we say, what's going on around the world in different countries? And here we get insight into what's going on in Dubai, what's going on in Korea, what's going on in Brazil, what goes on in other parts of the world. Today, we are very honored and privileged to have a presenter, a colleague from the GIMI Think Tank also. His name is Isuru, and Isuru has been working with us in innovation for many years. He was first our client. As a client, he was a student of GIMI, and he took GIMI level 1 and level 2 while working for one of the most important prestigious companies in Japan called Rakuten. And Rakuten, for those of you who don't know, they have got gaming, they've got airplanes, they got everything. Rakuten is a mega organization.
They got a football team as well.
And they got a football team. For those who use the word football, they also have a soccer team. For those who use the word soccer, Rakuten was where Isuru was the head of innovation. And he was driving innovation across that company and trying to bring this notion that it's not just about business management and doing what we have to do right today, but how do we start working on creating new futures, what's next, what else, and how do you create a culture? And especially in countries where rule following is very important and being disciplined is very important, how do you actually get that mindset to change, to be able to also take more risk and do things which are beyond the boundaries of the job description. So Isuru basically embraced this thing. He brought in place knowledge of idea scale, crowdsourcing. He also partnered with idea scale and GIMI, idea scale to source ideas to get results, GIMI to do capability building and training across the company. And putting those two things together, he believed that this was the way to really spread. Once he started working at Rakuten, he says, hey, I can do this for hundreds of companies in Japan. And so he says, how can I take these two pieces together? The GIMI capability building with the crowdsourcing capabilities, and then other things that he's putting together to create ability to help corporations across Japan to bring innovation to the table. So we're very privileged to have somebody who really knows innovation. We're very privileged to somebody who has got the experience of working in a big company. We're very privileged to talk about with a person who's saying how they are trying to spread this message of innovation across multiple corporations. And we'll get an insight into what's going on in Japan, where most of us are curious, we're interested, but it's so far away from many of us, we never know what's going on. So now we've got an inside voice of what's next. So with that, I'd like to introduce Isuru, a very talented, experienced leader in innovation, one of the leaders in Japan. Welcome, Isuru. And we're looking for a great presentation from you. And to frame this conversation, we'll give you about 25 to 30 minutes to present, maybe 20 minutes if you want. We'll do about 30, 40 minutes of Q&A, but we want to stop on the hour by 10 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thanks, Tanira. So yeah, I think we worked together since 2014 when I was at Rakuten. So I'll just skip my introduction. Chandra gave me a really good introduction. So in brief, I've been in Japan almost for 20 years now. So I have worked with Rakuten and small startups, helping them to innovate, helping them to understand what is innovation. That's where exactly, I mean, I had to start, even with like one of most of the biggest corporations in Japan. Okay, so I will start with one of the cool projects I did when I was at Rakuten. It was called Rakuten Sha. It's in Japanese, Rakuten Bike Share Service. So this was a time that sharing economy type of new business were booming and everybody was trying to do something new. So we came up with this idea like, okay, so when you use sharing economy type of any type of service, you have to pay something if you're a client, customer. Why not we provide this kind of service just completely free, like Facebook? So we came up with this idea. We put a LED panel onto the wheel, and we projected ads. Let me see if I can play this. So it's like this.
I'm gonna put your hand. Yeah. The Rakuten
That's great.
So I mean, this was just one of the features it had. We put some environmental sensors, so we could just monitor the quality of the air and other stuff, and sell data. So that was the revenue model for this bike share service. But unfortunately, it was one of the failed attempts at Rakuten. What I believe it was failed because it was not the right timing. It had all the futuristic features. It was free for the users. The bikes were designed by VanMoof, one of the great e-bike company, and we were partnered with Motovelo. That's one of the best service providers in Japan. We had ICE Japan, who developed the LED panels and ad projector system. Then we had all the money we wanted from Rakuten, but still it failed. So another reason I saw for the failure of this project was it's the culture in Japan. So what happened when there is something new, something from outside Japan, people just stay away and see how it goes for a while. Especially they care more about safety and security, stuff like that. Once they know for sure it's working, then everybody try to like get into that service. But normally what happened, most of the companies in Japan, most of the innovations, they just give up like after 1 or 2 years. It's just like this. So what I did with the innovation project and after leaving Rakuten, I kept trying, contacted a lot of companies and a lot of door knocking and field work. But I realized Japan was actually not ready to accept just a platform. So Hitendra explained about the background of where I joined Idea Scale, which is a crowdsourced innovation management platform. So what I did there was, so I had some experience with GIMI and inbook and learning. So I gave away that knowledge free of charge. So for example, I would go there and then ask the executives, why do you want to innovate? What are the benefits? So they always come up with like, oh, we need to survive, we need to create more money, revenue, stuff like that. But nobody really understood about innovation premiums. So that was my approach in Japan to enter to this market. So everybody thinks about, okay, when we talk about Japan, a lot of innovations are happening, and yes, there are a lot of innovations, but it take really long time in Japan to kick off and actually win the market. The main reason, again, the culture. Outside Japan, I'm sure we all have experience like, okay, if you are idea man, you get to like explain, pitch your idea and get the recognition, and then you become the leader who just lead that project. But in Japan, what happened if you have really cool idea and crazy idea, you get hammered down and it's like, oh, no, it's not how we do it. Since we all do it this way, you should try the same way. That's basically what is happening in Japan, even now. So just to understand corporate culture, I put this graph here. This is something I do as a part of my market entry when I talk to my new clients. So I do free skill set and mindset assessment. So even before I start any business talk, I would just say, okay, you have a really good innovation management team. Let's see how they assess their self when it comes to innovation skill set and mindset. It's always like this. They have the mindset, they want to do it, but their lack of skill set. So this is where so lately I started pitching, okay, we have really good program which is provided by GIMI, and I pitch everything about GIMI and certification program. So just to understand a little bit about this skill set and mindset assessment, these are sample questions that I asked them. I mean, these are very simple questions, but this will eventually give me understanding about the team structure. So that gives me an easy path to pitch them about GIMI. All right, so basically this is what I wanted to explain today. Innovation is happening, but it's very slow. I would say they're still at a learning pace. They need a lot of attention. They need a lot of guidance. Once they have that, then they start their own innovation program. That's exactly what happened at Rakuten. So we did really good innovation program at Rakuten. Now, nobody's even like looking after that program. Everybody in the company contribute to the innovation process, and anybody who has a good idea, they can pitch to their executives, get funding, and create their own business. That's what happened with a lot of services. Like if you search for Rakuten drone service, that came through the same innovation program. All right, was it too quick?
No. So Isuru,
Yeah.
I think the questions. Let's get this to a Q&A session and everything else.
Sure.
We can talk about a couple of things. All right. So if you can stop presenting, perhaps, and then we can put the heads on the front.
Sure.
And I'll start you off with some questions because the idea is you got experience in Rakuten and you're trying to move these things across Japan. The first thing is you are highlighting that in Japan, there's an innovation mindset that is not allowing people to innovate to the extent they want to. I just want to make sure you understand, and I'm going to challenge now, Isuru. It doesn't matter what country we've gone to. It can be in Korea, it can be in Brazil, it can be in the United States, actually. They're all complaining about the same thing. We need an innovation mindset. People don't have the innovation mindset to innovate. So this seems to be a universal issue of all societies, where we create societies of people who are supposed to follow the rules. And if they follow the rules, you don't get arrested. If you follow the rules, you don't get in trouble, right? So those are the parts of follow the rules. And in a company, if you follow your job description, you don't get fired either. You actually get rewarded. Well, you want to get rewarded, but you won't get fired, for sure, right? So the notion of a whole society and the whole world is creating children who eventually were very creative, and we make them diverge out to do things. This is one part of it. But on the other side, as we complain about this growth mindset, or these mindsets that are all across the globe, it's not Japanese only, right? We see amazing innovations coming out of Japan for us on this side of the planet. And we see devices like gamification toys and all that. We see the creative comics that you guys are producing that all of us are now consuming like crazy in the United States. We are seeing productivity of amazing stuff coming out of Japan. So where is that creativity coming from? The creative engines of the cartoons and the movies that you guys own. You guys own the gaming industry to a large extent, and you are ahead of the world. We now talk about gaming. Nintendo was doing gaming 100 years ago, and they're leaders in this kind of thing. So that creativity has always been there. Can you talk about that creativity first? Because we do not see from the outside in, Japan is not being a creative nation. We do see Japanese people extremely disciplined and well-mannered and polite, but we see creativity.
Sure. Chandra, I think in the past, they were very creative and innovative. And by the time what happened, while they were like experiencing with things and the rapid development of Japan, they moved focus on to improve the quality. So they moved from innovation to Kaizen-centric, continuous improvement. I think that's what happened. So there are a lot of like innovations coming out from Japan, but when they hit the market, now there are a lot of competitors. So I think that's the main reason. Even right now, like there are a lot of like good innovations within companies, but they're really they won't like test and see if it is safe 100%, if it is everything working 100%. I think that's one of the problems with Japanese companies now. They are not willing to take that risk that somehow they try to protect their brand value.
It's true. That makes very good sense, though. As companies become bigger, the ability to just throw something out there and then let the market decide whether it's good or bad and then fix it is often difficult for companies with brands, because reputations are built on being perfect to some extent. So your risk profile declines as you become more and more of a brand. Entrepreneurs can do anything. They throw things out. Oh, we just throw things out. No problem. That's because they don't have a brand. Later on, they have a brand. They too have to be cautious about how they behave. So we see that also, but I can see that as, but what I was really intrigued by the statement where you said Kaizen and all the Six Sigma thinking and everything came out of Deming into Japan, which created incredible efficiency and incredible quality, which then we got Japan to move from being a Me Too company into a leader in many categories, got them to one side. And you said they have not been able to shed that history, the history of saying that if efficiency, quality control are more important than a wow of a new type of product and those kind of things. Yeah. So that's a very interesting point. And I think we can all reflect back in all our countries, how our own thinking is affected by what was the last initiative that your company put in place, or your country has been pushing on. As a result, the mindset of the people becomes that. I used to work at Motorola, and we embraced Six Sigma. But with Six Sigma, we were very clear. Six Sigma was fixing internal processes to get good quality. And then this thing called innovation, which is complementary, which is to break processes or create new products and new services and new businesses. And we were saying they were complementary. It wasn't the same team. That one was innovating processes that we could make better, faster, quicker. And the other one was breaking processes to create new processes, new products, new businesses. And we were able to separate that out very nicely. But when that Six Sigma thing moved from Motorola to GE, and GE became the owner, the flag owner of Six Sigma around the world, their management teams went around thinking that's the only way to work. And so when Jack Welch was CEO and he was leaving, three of the four people put their hats in saying, I want to be CEO. And they were all from inside GE because they thought GE was creating the best management. One of them got it, Jeff Immelt. The other three left. And one became the CEO of Motorola, one of 3M, and one of Home Depot. Guess what they did over the next 3 years? They put Six Sigma in place. They stopped doing any of the innovation breakthrough projects. They saved money by not doing that. They got efficiency in the system. And 2 years, 3 years, they left and showing lots of profit. But what did they really do? They emptied the pantry of future innovations. And they used up the pantry of the last CEO's innovation to do that. And this mindset of the last initiative being successful becomes our culture. So that's an interesting point. I'm going to ask the panel to start thinking about questions to ask you also. Isuru, I want to just keep on probing because when we look from the outside in, we think Japan's amazing, right? So skincare companies and beverage companies, for example, all the skincare companies of the world in Brazil, Natura, for example, companies in Colombia, Belcor, they look at Japan as the leader in terms of packaging. They look at in terms of the ingredients, in the way they create products for beauty products. Japan leads the world there in many cases. Beverages, the bottles, the packaging, the ingredients, the things that goes inside there also. We see that. And so we see from our side that you guys must have the most demanding customers, discerning customers, and therefore those customers are pulling innovation to what's next. And so again, is that true? Are your customers really, really hard to please, and therefore they're demanding, and therefore you guys drive innovation?
So, I mean, it's a good question because I have one of the biggest cosmetics producer in Japan as my client, Kosei. So, yeah, this is what I've seen. These companies, either they think they don't have employees who has great ideas, or they want to like keep protecting their brand. So what they do, they tie up with startups and they move to different countries and build their small subsidiaries to do all the testing and stuff for them. So for example, the Kosei, what they did, they built a small company in India. So now they work with that company to get all the creative ideas. So one of the product that released by Kosei, I think it was last year. So they always in Japan, they work with clients and get their feedback to develop new products. But it's always like same request. Improve the quality. They don't really ask for anything new, just quality. So one request that they got from India, they were like really amazed by that. Even that they shared with me, Isuru, do you know these kind of ideas? Like, so from India, one of a female employee, she sent an idea. She was asking like, hey, we have so many cosmetics, skincare companies in India. They all have armpit whitening creams. Why you don't have that? So the Kosei was like, why you need armpit whitener? Because women in Japan, they would never ask for that kind of product because they don't need it. But this idea came from a lady from India, and they were amazed, and they were like, oh, we got to do this product. So quickly they worked on that, and they produced that product. So they have all the technique and everything, but they didn't have the idea. So in my experience, that's what is happening now in Japan. So they go outside Japan and bring all the brilliant ideas. Japan has the technology, resources, and everything. They can quickly reply to that whatever the problem.
It's great. What a great story. I mean, this is an example of you have the competencies to create any product or any package and anything, ingredients to do that, but the insights are lacking. And you're saying they were able to crowdsource insights to some extent from other parts of the world.
Yeah.
And they were quick to actually understand it and convert it into a product. So there is something inside the system that they can quickly convert those ideas into an implementation. And then there's, of course, will it succeed in the market or not is a different question.
Yeah.
So what you're hypothesizing here is one of the challenges in Japan is those insights are lacking for whatever reasons, right? And just sharing a story, and Ron will tell the story often, is working with one of the big body skincare companies we were working with. They were looking for ideas, and they were stuck, and it's a very European company, and they didn't have a lot of ideas of what to do next. And they found that something was going on in Mexico and something in the Philippines. They were using hair dye, and the hair dye color that was chosen in one place was very popular, but some different regions were not talking to each other. And they were actually put into a network and a council to talk to each other, ideas exchanged quickly. And suddenly the Philippines product that they created locally for the color of the hair, which was so considered beautiful, could also apply in Mexico. But the headquarters, which was in the US and in the Netherlands, were basically unaware or unwilling for that network collaboration conversation to happen. So ideas emerge everywhere, but sometimes they are not getting to who needs to get to fix those kind of things. So that's really an interesting notion on that. I have as we have this conversation, I think it's important. An observation in my career, I've worked across the globe, and I work with senior executives in many industries. And we start creating what we call stereotypes of hypotheses of the different regions to help you manage things, right? So we learned something about how individuals in a company work according to the boss. Mm-hmm. And one of the things is in the United States, when the CEO says, here's what we want to do, what should we do? And there's a discussion on the how to do it and all that. There's a what should we do? And there's execution, how should we do it? We find in the US, many of the employees start arguing amongst each other, saying, what does the CEO know? That's not the right thing to do. And they argue the what. And therefore, a lot of discussion happens on what should we do. And so there's lots of ideas on what's that have emerges out of that. We saw in Europe that there's not as much discussion on the what. They accept what the what is, but then they fight with each other on how to do it. How to do it. And then we saw in other parts of the world where they would ask, it's not the what, the how, but when should we do it? When should we do it? Is it urgent, important now or not? And they would discuss amongst each other. We agree on the what and the how. The boss said it, and we got some idea of how to do it, but when should we do it? And they would discuss whether it's this week or next week, the work of the time element. And then there's the one last part of this thing is really not just what, how, and when, who said it? Who exactly said it? And based on who, everybody starts lining up around this thing to a topic. These are stereotypes on how people think and act, and cultures are evolve around that, which is the right way to do. What is the culture you think in Japan if there is a requirement saying, hey guys, everybody should innovate? Where will the challenge be in the company to try and drive that kind of thinking?
And Hitendra, as the guest kind of answers that, it seems to me this is Ron Jonash, in all of these cultures, the generic successful solution has often been to create an entity or council or committee or whatever in or adjacent to the corporation that has different written and unwritten rules of the game. We've done a lot of work, as you probably know, on written and unwritten rules of the game. And so if you can create this, and it can be a side, it can just report to the board, but they have the freedom to do things like we do with the Innovation Olympics, reach out, get new ideas, sift through them, and decide kind of how best to move forward. At SC Johnson, very large family-owned company, that is, if you don't sit in this group for a while, you are not in the succession line for CEO. You simply have to rotate through this organization, which is independent of R&D, independent of marketing, reports directly to the chairman or the board now, and comes up with new suggestions that are beyond the current business. It's intentionally, it cannot be for line extensions or new fragrances or new flavors or anything else. It has to be for what's new, but they put anybody, even the most conventional Six Sigma continuous improvement person, if he or she wants to become a senior executive, they have to go through that. And they may be looking at manufacturing processes or go-to-market processes or something else, but it has to be about innovation, new ways to get to market, new ways to produce, new products, new services, new experiences. And so it seems to me that has been, as a generic approach, it obviously has its own kind of modifications in each country and each company, but seems to have been the most successful way, because otherwise you're very rarely going to, in short period of time, alter the culture and the rules of the overall company. Just won't happen. And so, unless you have a new CEO or a new board or something else. And so this has been the best way. And that's what, at least from our experience, we would recommend kind of to everybody. If you run up against this, you've got to find a way to have this somewhat separate, somewhat volunteer, somewhat whatever. But the CEO wants the new ideas. They just don't want them to penetrate the whole company. So anyhow, that's just a thought on this.
Thank you, Ron.
Sorry, Isuru, hi. Just to add to...
Let's give Isuru a chance to answer the question, then Edwin, you're next.
Yeah, okay. No. It's before that, to complement what you're saying, just to ask Isuru, because in Latin America, it's not the what and the how, it's the why. Why should I work on that? So give me the reason why I need to be involved in that. Because we think that the Japanese culture is not that questioning something, it's more doing things. But here in Latin America, why should I be involved in that? Give me the reason of the motivation.
Great. I think in Japan, there is a word for that. It's called nemawashi. Are you familiar with that word?
Educated.
Okay.
Teacher.
Okay. So nemawashi is like you get permission from everybody who's going to involve in advance, even just throw the idea. It happens with anything, like when you give someone a promotion, a pay raise, or a transfer, anything. You always do that nemawashi. So that's a term in Japan corporate culture. So if you haven't done your nemawashi, nothing will happen. Nothing will move. So I see that's what happened at the early stages of these innovation programs in companies. They didn't do any nemawashi. Somebody from outside or somebody, or maybe CEO want to, like, okay, let's do innovation. But no one moved. Again, there is another concept in Japan, unless it's written in your job description, you really don't bother about anything else. So I think the culture is changing slowly but surely. Like Ronald said, now they understand, okay, this is where things didn't work. So every company is trying to create a separate branch or entity or something that 100% work on corporate innovation, work with different departments and try to educate their employees about the importance, why they need to engage in innovation, and also HR, they are also engaging in this. so the employees get properly evaluated for their contribution. It's changing, but that's the culture.
Great. Isuru, I'm gonna prepare Jin Hong to put him on the spot. But Korea is very near to Japan. And what is in both of your opinions similarities and differences between the Japanese and the Koreans? Because Korea right now is also doing, it's got a similar type of mindset and cultures in many things, but it's doing really well with the LGs and the Samsungs and the Hyundais and the Poscos. And they've got companies which have gone global. They're producing quite innovative products and services. Similar countries. I would like to know the similarities and what are the differences between the two countries. I'm going to allow Isuru to go first, and then Jin Hong to perhaps respond to say that makes sense to you or not. I'm going to put the spot on Jin Hong as he gets inside here.
All right. So no offense, but this is something like every Japanese consumer believes. Like in early stages, Korea was like copying everything from Japan. So that's like me too. We do that same thing. Then all of a sudden, Samsung and LG, now they're producing like better stuff than what is in Japan. In fact, I think, sorry, maybe I'm mispronouncing, Hyundai. They left Japan 10 years back and they came back last month to Japan. So now they're stronger than most of the Japanese products and services. To be honest, I have no clue about how that happened. But I know one thing. I think maybe you can comment later. I think education-wise, now Korea is investing a lot, and education, technology, the people development, where Japan side, all the old people who built innovation culture, Japan, now they're at their later stages, and the young culture, young people, they just want to have fun, enjoy the life. That's what I think the real difference, but you can pitch on that.
Jin Hong, do you want to make some comments as to what is the perception between Japan and Korea, and why Korea is looking like it's doing better than Japan, even though Japan is about 3 times the number of people, maybe even 4 times the number of people, and it's had a lead for almost 100 years in many aspects. And yet in the last 25, 30 years, Korea is surging forward. Is it the education, is it the mindset? Is it just hungrier? What is the reason why this is happening? Because Isuru says maybe the Japanese have become complacent.
I think the first difference from Japan and Korea is to make fast decision, I guess. The characteristic of Japanese company are very, how should I say? I think they pursue completeness in all the aspects. But yes. Korean company, I think they started first something and set the goal, and then pushes very fast. That's I think there is process. There are some pros and cons between them, but anyway, nowadays the industry is very fast changing right now. So the characteristics of Korean companies are more efficient to adapt themselves to the environment, I guess, right now, even though they have some trials or some problems with some failure or something. Anyway, but they trying to implement something very fast, and also they very what is so they are good at what is invest a big something in terms of big factory or some produce what is developing some big research center like that. In terms of investment, they make a decision for big investment in terms of in the long run. So I think that is some characteristics of Korean companies right now.
You know, that's a great sets of insights in there. I want to make sure I pull them out for everybody else in the audience and Japan maybe to also relearn what they might have done in the past. We used to work with LG display in Korea. And this thing that Jin Hong talks about, we worked with BJ Koo back then. He was the chairman CEO of LG. And we told him what it would take to build a big factory for displays. And we said it would take something like about 18 months to build it. The first thing he said was, and that sound he made basically said, this is not good. And he says, can you do it in half the time? And when we said, no, we cannot. He says, look, you got to go pali pali. And he said, pali pali. And he smacked his hands together. He said, pali pali. And this culture called pali pali means fast, fast, quick, quick, now, now. Whatever it is, was the urgency he created right from the top, saying, whatever you're going to do it in half the time. Do it even faster. Do it faster. And he said, I don't care. Go back out, figure it out, but do it in half the time. And he put pressure on the timing of getting these things done. Now, in there's risk associated to it. So now the second part, first, I want to make sure Korea, wherever, every meeting I have is like, can we go faster? That pali pali culture has certainly accelerated Korea to where it has to be. But I like the second point that Jin Hwan made. When we told them what was the cost and investment for building this factory, it was about $8 billion. It's a very large number. The partner in the joint venture was Philips. Philips goes, that's a lot of money. and Jin Hong is smiling. And BJ Koo said, no, let's do it. Let's do it right now. And this willingness to invest bigger, quicker, and faster is also part of the risk-taking profile of doing that. And they were willing to make those big bets, as Jin Hong saying, big bets on that. $8 billion factory. Now, there's other logic that we saw in there. One was, of course, BJ Koo wanted to beat Samsung. So LG wants to beat Samsung, there's competition. Both of them, Samsung and LG wants to beat Sony, of course, the Japanese. So there's a competition between Korea, a healthy competition between Korea and Japan. But there was also something about where they wanted to build a factory. They wanted to build a factory right on the border of North Korea and South Korea in Paju, not in Paju, in Paju, which is right on the border. So the North Koreans could see this wealth and growth of the people and everything else. To say, come over here, join us. There was nationalism and everything else that you see in the country. But certainly appetite for big, bold bets, recognition of competition, then who do we want to beat? Pali, 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 pali. And for the last 20, 30 years of my experience of innovation around the world, I talk about these stories that those who move quickly into action, those who start building things quickly, are the ones who are going to win an innovation, because we don't really know what we're building because the future has not been decided yet. So whatever we build is the future. But you can't wait and plan to do that. So maybe there's an insight in there that maybe there's parts of Japan which are beginning to be very much about planning, and not good execution. And as a result of that, Jin Hong, thank you. Those are great insights for us. And it's really helpful to have a global team at any moment we can call on the spot.
Actually, Hitendra, I'm really happy to. I'm really happy we had this conversation, because I'm right now helping a Korean company called Swing Mobility. I think he knows that the kickboard the business. So they want to launch their service by May. So I was talking to other people and they were like, okay, we can't really do that. We have to go through the police, the economic council, get all the approval, the safety issues, insurance and everything. Yes, yes, exactly. He was like, I was like, no, we can't. We have to go through all these bureaucracy and everything. Even getting number plates, you have to wait like every month. The Japanese government, they issue only 200 number plates. And Swing Mobility, they want to put 500 scooters by May. I really understand the difference.
That's great. That's great. So we got another question coming from Cristanto. Cristanto, I'm going to put the spotlight on you and please share your question.
Okay, hi. Isuru, thank you for your presentation. Cristanto
Sure.
from Jakarta, Indonesia. My consulting company is very much oriented to Japanese management. So some 20 years ago or more, I lead business people to do benchmark study to Japan, observing about quality management and innovation to some degree. That we visited the most famous company like Toyota, and then in the construction we visited Takenaka, and also with
You
one
met
of
Takenaka as well?
Takenaka Corporation, yeah.
Oh, great. That's one of my clients.
And also in the service industries we visited, at that time was famous, the Sanwa Bank. So, and we learned about quality management, but also talking about innovation, that we understand that at that time, innovations belong to the top management, and they call it, rather than Kaizen or they call it Kaikaku, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And then there's another one word again, which I'm not sure. I think it's Kakushin or something. Yeah, but I don't know what it is. But Kaikaku, I know that's supposed to be innovation or breakthrough innovation. So you said that in Japan, innovation has a cultural barrier to make it happen. But at that time, I learned that it is not cultural barrier, but it belongs only to top management. Once top management decide, and then plan, as SP said. But once a plan is made and decided, they tend to move very fast.
Absolutely, you're right.
So what's your comment about that? Thank you.
Yeah, so until everybody decided and agreed, that's what I mentioned, Nemawashi is done, then everybody moves so fast. But you are right. The Japanese culture is always follow the leader, obey the leader, and wait for his call. Nobody's want to take action or be the risk taker. That's the culture. But once you have done all the nemawashi, and then you know, okay, if something goes wrong, everybody's going to get the blame. So let's do that. That's exactly what is happening. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So that's great comments and that you have made over here. So we're coming close to the end of our conversation over here about Japan and how we see it and how things have changed. I see one hand up, so I'm going to make sure Edwin gets a chance to ask a question, and we'll try and wrap it up. But as we all reflect on this thing, I mean, what we are hearing, and I hope you're hearing, that innovation is difficult in every country of the world. And even in Korea, as much as they're doing pali-pali and doing big things, there it is still important for the senior people to open the gate and give permission. And it's also important for, in these cultures, about losing face. So losing face is also a big part of the cultural elements that says, do I want to lose face? Am I careful about the risk I take? And so senior leadership have always, even in the United States or in Scandinavia, senior leadership open the gates to give permission for the people to do things. And when those people don't do a good job or they're not able to get the result because it's a hard thing they're doing, innovation, do they get punished, reprimanded, or are they recognized for trying and the learning which comes out of that? And if you're able to do those things, again, I'm going to say universally, this is not Japan or anywhere else. This is a universal thing. Then we can fix it. Think of your own kids. When you ask your kids to do something, and they try, and you say, you failed. That's not a way to raise a child. You say, well done for trying, right? Well done for trying. And let's try it again. Or let's do it again, or let's do it differently, right? But let's do that. This parenting style of I'm right and you're wrong versus, hey, discover, learn, explore makes a big difference. And this losing face cultures are also part of our societies to manage this thing. So to be very careful of that. Asia has got that, South America has got some of that. Wherever there's a lot of power from the top, not as much power at the next level, you see that. In the United States, you don't see that much power sometimes because there's so much mobility between companies can leave. So you can say what you want to say, but there's also permissions given in the way parents treat their children. Kids and parents are almost kind of treated equally in the society over here. So those little things create a different way of approaching a problem and discussing it versus keeping quiet versus opening your mouth. My kids talk and tell me I'm wrong all the time. And they're quite comfortable saying it. Do that in India, and that kid is disrespectful. Do that in Indonesia, and that kid's say, what kind of upbringing did you have? Right?
Sure.
So those are not bad upbringings, they're just different upbringings, and each one of them liberates the flexibility of information moving quickly. And from that information moving, respect, trust for each other.
Absolutely.
Right. So I'm going to let our friend from Colombia have a question. Edwin, you have the spot.
Thank you, Hitendra. I just want to link what Ron was mentioned about the unwritten rules of the culture. And that's the perception we have here, at least here in Colombia, from Korea and Japan. The discipline from Japan is like synonymous of perfection. And the discipline that we have from Korea is a synonymous of learning. And I'm going to put the example in the auto parts industry where I've been involved for many years. If you want something perfect and you don't have time to fail on it, for example, and you need a very good car that you know that is not going to fail nowhere, buy a Japanese Toyota. But if you're willing to go and try the learning curve of the Koreans, buy a Korean car. It's going to do the work, but probably it's going to fail. But you know, as a client, that the discipline in Korea is learning. Exactly what happened with Hyundai that Isuru was mentioning. They start putting in the market vehicles that we was trying and we was running and they were fixing it, and they go there with the time, 10 years, you said. But if you don't have the time to learn with them, just go to the Japanese product that you know that is going to be perfect. And that is the price, of course. We reveal engines here in Colombia. My father does. If you can to replace some auto parts every year or every 2 years, you go with the Korean and you have the contact with the manufacturing in Korea and they are going to improve. But if your client doesn't want to pay, go to the Japanese part. So that's something that we understand as clients, and without knowing the culture, we are involved in the culture. And we are helping both sides of the war and both factories to work with us. So I just want to share that. For me, it's like the synonymous of discipline. Discipline in Japan is perfect. Discipline in Korea is learning. So if that is embedded in the culture, the companies will work with it.
Is there any?
Just a comment.
I completely agree with that. Sorry, no, you were going to say something.
No, go ahead.
I completely agree with that. That's exactly what happened with Hyundai. They produced really good cars, but they were not reliable as Japanese cars. So they left, but now they have those standards and they have really good, reliable cars. So they came back. Exactly that's the cost you have to pay in the other way. Like if you're buying a Japanese car, it's expensive but reliable. Korean car or any other car, maybe less reliable, but they're trying their best at the market. So yeah, completely agree.
One of the things, because we were directly involved with Hyundai back then,
Oh,
and they embraced we didn't call it that then, but they embraced the power of and. In other words, they had to immediately fix the quality problem. And how do you convince the public, the consumer, that you fixed it? You give them a 50,000-mile guarantee on everything. And so they were the initiators of that, but that was just catch up. That was maybe a better guarantee, but nobody really necessarily believed it. They embraced innovation at the same time. So what we were doing was, okay, if we're able to rapidly close the gap on quality, how do we become the innovation leader? And how to become the recognized innovation leader? So part of this is the old story of who's ever lagging is trying to catch up and surpass. But I think they did a great job on it. And it is the recognition that you have to do both, whether it's Kaizen or whatever. You have to do continuous improvement. You have to do quality. And if you want to be a leader, you have to drive innovation. You're not going to become the leader just by screwing the screws tighter. You know, you've got to do more. And I think Hyundai and a lot of other companies have recognized that. And that's difficult in a company, difficult with a company culture. I remember at Verizon, you know, they charged 25 cents for a styrofoam cup at the coffee shop because it was all about cost, all about cost, all about cost, all about continuous improvement. And they lost out eventually. So I think, and then they came back, of course, but I think that this whole thing of doing both and having the capacity to do both within a single culture is really, really important, as you've noted.
Ron, thank you very much for your comments. Isuru, we're going to wrap up. So first of all, thank you very much for coming.
Sure.
We provoked a lot of discussion and conversations and hopefully insights for the audience and also for yourself, perhaps, in the process of this conversation. The key message for everybody over here is innovation is happening. We see Japan as a very innovative country. We see you guys providing right now a whole bunch of cultural elements to the world, whether it's through your comics and cartoons. I've never seen the phenomena that I've seen in the recent times in the United States. Every kid is watching, reading the cartoons or watching it on Netflix. So they are really into the Japanese entertainment industry. The gaming industry has been very strong with Nintendo and PlayStations and all that. The cars have always impressed and wowed people. The phones, the displays, the televisions that came out of Japan. But what you are expressing is maybe there's a complacence in the country. People are becoming comfortable, they're wealthy, and therefore maybe you don't have to work as hard, you don't have to take as much risk, perhaps. And then the countries are trying to catch up or overtake. Korea, as an example, and other countries, they need to go faster. They feel the urgency more, and therefore there's something about being a catch-up competitor, but being aware of your competitors and not getting behind is important too. And then generally, the cultural elements show up everywhere, universally. Top-down power, if the boss says it, then everybody will do it. But then the bosses have to provide the space, the time for these guys to work on. And if they're successful, of course, you recognize them. But when they're not successful, you still recognize them. If you do that, then people are willing to continue doing these things versus just doing the job description. You don't get fired for your job description. You get, you won't get rewarded tremendously, but you don't get fired for that. And a lot of people choose that as an option, a safe option for survival. And that's very nice to be problems for everything. So Isuru for everybody on the network who's listening in, he is the expert of innovation in Japan. He has been driving innovation in big corporation, Rakuten as an example, but now he's working with a range of many companies and bringing innovation management to them in terms of helping them with ideation, in terms of putting innovation management systems, building capability through GIMI training across Japan. And behind, of course, is the idea that he's saying some of the best ideas Japan is getting from the outside. And so all of you who are part of the GIMI network, connect with him and see whether some of his companies could benefit with getting insights from where you are located, whether in Korea, Indonesia, in Colombia, in Egypt, in the United States, and any other part of the world. True. You got 30 seconds to say something interesting, and then we close the books.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I learned a lot, especially about Korea. I'm already doing a project, and it really gave me a good understanding, and I think I can now better work with the Korean team. Yeah, innovation is happening. The way it happens is different in every company, every culture. So we just have to work with them, and I see a good opportunity there for GIMI members to educate and help them. So let's work on that, and thank you very much for inviting today.
Thank you, Isuru. Thank you, everybody. Well done.
Thank you.
Laura, we can stop. Isuru,